Win the game by 30, don't grab your crotch.
He won't grab his crotch, but he's going to bury him.
That's fine. Win the game by 30, but be mature about it. Be a leader.
I don't care if he wins the game by 30 and walks up and hands him the game ball. I'd laugh my ass off.
And that's the difference. That's not a leader of men. That's a petty person. You're an NFL quarterback. You are leading a franchise. You got to grow up. At some point, you have to grow up and be a leader and not a petty little child.
Why?
Because that's what good quarterbacks do. That's what Tom Brady does. Be boring. Andrew Luck, be boring. Russell Wilson, be boring.
They're not
Win
always
games.
boring.
They are when they're leading their teams. You want a guy when he gets in the huddle, he's going to be calm and cool.
Phil Rivers is a trash talker.
Come on. He says gosh darn and golly gee whiz.
It's still his trash talking. He's just a moron about it.
He's not a moron about it. He does it in a way that doesn't offend other people. That's the difference. He's a leader. Even to the people he's trash talking, they understand the purpose of it. He's not being petty. He's not being personal. He's not being an asshole. He's just not.
We're gonna disagree on this till the end of time because Baker Mayfield sums up Cleveland's attitude. He does. Cleveland's called the mistake on the lake. He was supposed to not be there. He wasn't supposed to be in college football after his rookie year. He has
connected with his team, the city, in a way that is impressive, and I hope continues. And for him and for the Browns, I hope he matures and grows. Not just maturity. Let's move off of that. I hope he grows as a football player. I hope he grows as a leader. And I hope he becomes a 3-time Super Bowl champion in Cleveland. I do. I want the Browns to do well. I just think that as it's structured, he just needs to take those steps. That's all. And you don't think he has as many of those steps to take, and that's fine. But the goal, at least in my opinion, we were hoping for the same results.
Right.
We just disagree on how they're going to get there.
Right. Out of the young quarterbacks, and all I'm going to say is take Mahomes out of it. Out of the young quarterbacks, who you want above Baker?
Right now, I don't know that I think we're year end. It's too early. I mean, I might take Sam Darnold over Baker, quite honestly. If you put Sam Darnold on the Browns, there's nothing to say he would have done the same thing. And we just don't know. And it's hard with 1 year. It's hard with 1 year.
Sam Darnold did not look good.
Sam Darnold's a good quarterback. Again, he was on the Jets. They were terrible. They're just awful. Baker Mayfield had so much talent around him. You guys make him sound like he was throwing to Brad Gurton, Rick Carpenter, and John O'Donnell. He had a top wide receiver, a top running back, two of the best guards on the offensive line, a tight end that finally learned how to play football. He had an amazing set of talent.
And the Browns were number 7 in the league in drops.
So what? Then he would have been even better. That doesn't mean his talent was bad.
No, it wasn't great. I mean, I like Landry. I like Callaway is developing, but he has a dropsy problem. Njoku could be a stud if he'd ever learned to catch the ball.
He was one of the best tight ends in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Njoku was great.
He still has dropsy problems.
The talent that the Browns had around him contributed greatly to Baker Mayfield's success. It did. I mean, there's nothing more you can say about that.
Well, they still need an offensive lineman, which looks like that's going to be a first pick of the draft. They need that defense to shore up. Could you imagine if he didn't have to go out there and score 30 to win the game?
Right, and that's interesting because a lot of what we hear about Baker Mayfield is in 14 games, by the way. You guys keep saying 13. Played 14 games.
Yeah, half of them won.
Not half. He threw 23 passes. In 3 of his starts,
he came in
the
second quarter.
Yeah, but he threw more passes in that game than he threw in 3 of his starts. Yeah. So now let's just move off of that because it comes off like I don't appreciate what Baker did. I do, but he did have to score a ton of points because, as you were about to say, the defense kept putting him behind. Yeah.
Well, the defense was ranked like 20th, and that's
nice.
Seriously, because if you look at this last half of the league, last half of the year, they were 31st. Now, and that's why I'm saying they can win this division next year because Pittsburgh's defense is not that great. Pittsburgh's losing Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Roethlisberger. That team has to figure out if they got to start getting along again. That's going to be Pittsburgh's got a whole bunch of problems going on there. Cincinnati, you got to see what that coach is going to do. Cincinnati's kind of a dumpster fire. We all agree. It's just they finally fired Marvin Lewis who did something right. But you look at Baltimore, and you sit there with Baltimore, and my only question with Baltimore is I don't trust Lamar Jackson. And like we were talking about before, and I know you're about to say their defense, it's a year-to-year league. Every team can retract. If that defense steps off just a little bit, and all of a sudden you force Lamar Jackson to have to score 20-plus points a game, you might not trust that as much.
I understand, and you can play that game with the Browns, though.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that goes all the ways. Here's what I'll say. The most elite unit in that division is Ravens defense. It always will be, at least going into the next year. Now, it could change, but that was the best defense in football, and it's not going to get much worse. I mean, they may lose a piece here and there, but they were very young, by the way.
Except for a couple of key, like Suggs is a key player for the.
Yeah, but that secondary is young and really good.
There's one guy in that second. There's one or two guys in that secondary that might go though. They have to sign them.
They're going to be good for a long time. They just that defense. Now their offense is questionable, and I agree with you. You do not want Lamar Jackson to be the guy that you have to rely upon, and he won't be. Now, other thing you have to remember about Baltimore is they had terrible wide receivers. Other than Buffalo, they probably had the worst wide receiver core in football. So that if they improve that, that's going to help.
But we watched him throw the ball. That kid can't throw a football. Just can't.
Look, I watched Randall Cunningham not throw a football accurately for 4 years, and all of a sudden, he got Randy Moss, and gosh darn if he didn't light it up. I mean, gosh darn. I channeled my inner Phillip Rivers there. Look, let's move off the AFC North. Let's talk about a couple of quick things. Otherwise, I want to talk about the Colts. I have been a big Colts guy since the season ended. 9-1 to end the year. They won a road playoff game. They lost in the divisional round. They get Andrew Luck back. He's healthy. They got who I think should be the rookie of the year in Quentin Nelson and their offensive line. They have one of the most amounts of cap space available. The Colts are, to me, the team to beat in the AFC. And that is saying a lot, considering how stacked the AFC is. What did you think about the Colts this year? And I guess I don't want to hold you to them. Other than the Browns, who is your other AFC contenders going into the next year?
I do like the Colts, too. I agree with you there. They finally put it together. They finally kept Andrew Luck upright, is what I talked about for 3 years. You went out and you got the number one pick, you got Andrew Luck, and yet he's trying to throw the ball while he's laying on the ground, which was just stupid. They never put anybody there to protect him. That being said, Kansas City is going to be interesting. Like I said, you worry about Mahomes with the second year jitters because it is technically his second year starting. Same as you work about with Baker. New England's going to be there. They just are. Until they decide not to, I'm not betting against them.
It's hard to argue that, unfortunately.
New Orleans, I see New Orleans falling off. We talked about this a little bit. Drew Brees looks like he might have found that wall, and unfortunately, it could be almost his time to retire. He might come out and do it another year, but that team, it looks like Brees is pretty much close to the end.
Well, in that article that the Browns were picked to be the AFC North champs, the Colts and the Saints actually got a lot of love for the next Super Bowl. I agree with you. I think Drew Brees is changing as a quarterback. Now, what really is happening in New Orleans, though, is their defense is good and their running game is great. Now, Mark Ingram will be gone, but Kamara and maybe another running back make that work. And maybe Drew Brees isn't washed up. Who knows? But I really think that next year the Colts have a chance. I like the Chargers a lot. I know we think that Phillip Rivers is a little long in the tooth, and that team underperformed at the end of the year, but I thought they were one of the best teams in football. So I'm going to say the Chargers and the Colts are kind of my two teams to beat, and then we'll see what happens in the NFC.
Well, the weird thing is free agency is going to mean so much this year, isn't it? I mean, Jacksonville's weird because you got players that say they're not coming back, and you got Jacksonville saying they're not taking certain players back, so that's going to be if you see what happens there. And there's a couple good defensive players there that they're talking about losing. And that's the pieces the Browns need is defense. So if they can pick some of them up in free agency, that would be really, really nice.
Well, and I want to we are getting to the end of the show. I want to kind of close out with two guys who are really going to play a big role, I think, going forward. One is Nick Foles. The story was they are either going to pick up Nick Foles' option of $20 million and try to trade him. Then it became out, well, that probably won't work. So they're probably going to franchise him for about $16.5 million and try to trade him. Now, if they can't trade him, they could then rescind the franchise tag. Nick Foles, do you see him in Philly? And if you don't, where is he going to make the biggest difference for one of these teams that we just talked about, which could use a quarterback?
It's weird because when that came out, that just came out today, and today also came out that Carson Wentz was apologizing to teammates for not being the teammate he should have been. And that's just... Look, if you're Philly, Like, the best thing you can have is two good quarterbacks. I get it, but Wentz has to stay healthy for a year. I think if you franchise tag him, you're franchise tagging him to see if Wentz is going to stay healthy. I wouldn't trade him.
Yeah, that just puts so much.
It does put so much money, but without Nick Foles, they're not in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, but Nick Foles sucked at the beginning of this year. I think the team rallied around Nick again, and I don't know why. I don't want to put that on Carson Wentz. Now, just to kind of go full circle on that story, there was a story that in the Philadelphia Union that said that players in the locker room felt that Carson Wentz was immature, not a good leader, et cetera, et cetera. But now Carson Wentz has said, listen, a lot of that's not true, and a lot of players came in his defense. But Carson Wentz did say, I should have been a better leader.
Right.
It's hard when you're that young and fighting through injuries like that. I don't know if he comes back to be a MVP level player. I don't. But I do know he was an MVP level player, and I think you have to stick with him over Nick Foles. I would like to see Nick Foles go to a situation. It's kind of weird. Like, Minnesota just signed Kirk Cousins. They won't move off of him. But if he came to a pretty complete team... Denver scares me because they're kind of rebuilding too. I don't really know that there's a perfect fit off the top of my head, but I would like to see him get a chance. It might be Jacksonville. We talked about Jacksonville being bad, but if they get rid of the cancers that they have, and I don't know exactly who they might be, those pieces on defense are really good. Fournette's really good.
Fournette's gone.
He's not gone yet. Fournette's really good. The last we've heard is that Marone and Fournette have made up. Who knows? It's the offseason. They lie about everything.
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, trading healthy, one of the best running backs in the NFL.
And TJ Yeldon, who also was a bit of a problem this year. Yeah. But running backs are a little fungible. But I think Nick Foles needs to go somewhere that has talent. We know what Nick Foles is. In St. Louis, he was not a starter. The guy's not young. He's not going to be a superstar quarterback. He's a game manager who is a good leader of men. And I think he can make a difference somewhere. I don't think it should be in Philly, but he can make a difference somewhere.
He could be, look, if Eli decides he's going to retire, he could be a good mentor there for, what's his name, from Ohio State.
That would be Haskins, yeah. They're looking at Haskins at the number 6 or 7 draft pick.
I think Haskins could be a good NFL quarterback. He's got a good arm. He's pretty accurate. I don't have a problem with Haskins. But it would be nice to be able to sit there and let him learn from a guy, even if it is for a few games.
Yeah.
But now we're on this trend again where if you're drafted in top 5, you got to start.
Yeah.
That hurts a lot of quarterbacks.
I think it does. I mean, I look at Josh Allen for the Bills, and at the beginning of the year, he was just awful. Now, part of that is the Buffalo Bills really have no talent at wide receiver. None. Yeah. Zero. So what happened was Josh Allen became an effective runner of the football, if not terrifying to me at times. But if they put weapons around Josh Allen, I think that year of experience will help him. Juxtapose that to Sam Darnold, who I think the year of experience has hurt him. I think he really could have used a good mentor to kind of get his feet wet in the NFL. I still think Sam Darnold, he is actually the one I would have preferred to go to Buffalo in the beginning, or Josh Rosen. I think those two guys can mature a lot, so we'll see what happens there.
I like Allen for Buffalo better than I like Rosen. I'm not a fan of Rosen. He just a concussion problem, and there was questions if he even really wanted to play football. Rosen's just that guy I'm never going to be sold on. Buffalo is interesting because they have one of the core young quarterbacks. Josh Allen can throw the ball a mile.
He can.
And if you could have had someone there for him to learn from,
right,
instead of just out there trying to make play after play. He reminded me, and it's sad to say, he reminded me of watching Tim Couch go out there for the first year at the Browns, just doing everything he can to get a win for his team, which right, I give him credit for. But, like, when you're hurdling players in the middle of the field and you're a quarterback, you're not going to last long. And I know your head had be going, oh, my God, slide.
Well, what's interesting about Josh Allen is if not for Lamar Jackson, he would have been the top running quarterback in the league. And he may be, he's 6'5", 235. He may be the best athlete playing quarterback right now. It's just he's going to die if he continues to play that way.
Yeah. Well, you can't. There's no such thing as an old running quarterback in this league. It just isn't. I mean, and I know everybody's like, well, you can't. If they decide to slide, you can't hit them. The problem is when they're in the heat of the game, they forget they can slide. We see it happen time and time again. It happened in the Super Bowl. We were like, "Oh my God, he just got blasted."
Well, and you mentioned it before. I meant to fill this in when we were talking. That mistake, you mentioned the sack that he took,
yeah,
and we said, "What are you doing? Why didn't you throw the ball away?" Same thing when he was running out of bounds there. You know, he got clobbered. And actually, you mentioned it when we were watching it live.